Welcome to Faith and Life Together, the podcast where we chat about literally anything and everything about life from a Christian perspective. I'm your host, Melissa, and each week we dive into what it's like living as a Christian in today's world. Whether it's tackling everyday struggles, sharing uplifting stories, or answering those big, tough questions, we cover it all. Think of this as your space to find inspiration, practical advice, and a sense of community. So grab a cup of coffee, get comfy, and join the conversation. Let's navigate this journey of faith and life together. Hi, ladies. Thank you again for joining me on Faith and Life Together podcast. This is the month of thankfulness, so I've dedicated 4 weeks of different thankfulness gratitude podcasts, and I'm really getting a blessing, and it's opening my eyes to things that I needed to see. 50 years old, but there's still things that I read in my Bible, and I'm just amazed by it's there and how I just need to shape my life after that. So today is week 2, and we're going to talk about the silent thief of thankfulness. We're going to dig into the heart of what steals our gratitude: comparison, entitlement, distraction, and how we can reclaim a truly thankful heart. Philippians 4:1 says, "Not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content." So let's start with our first point. When gratitude gets quiet. Sometimes thankfulness doesn't leave us suddenly. It leaks away quietly. We don't wake up one morning and say, today I'm done being thankful. No, it slips out through comparison. It slips out through complaining, hurriness, and distraction. We love the idea of gratitude. We talk about counting blessings, writing gratitude lists, and being thankful for small things. But somewhere along the way, we still find ourselves sighing over what we don't have, wishing life looked a little different, or scrolling through other people's highlights, their reels, and thinking, why not me? It's not that we're ungrateful, we just forget. We forget who we are. We forget who God is and how good He's already been. That's how the thief works. The thief works quietly. He works steadily, stealing our thankfulness, piece by piece, until we're left wondering why our joy is missing. So our first point, we're going to talk about the unseen battle for a grateful heart. Paul wrote in Philippians from prison, yet it's one of the most joyful letters in the Bible. He wasn't surrounded by comfort. He was surrounded by chains. Yet he said he had learned to be content. That tells us something. It says gratitude isn't natural. Gratitude is learned. And it's learned in the classroom of hardship, not of comfort. When Paul says, I have learned, it means that he had to practice it. He had to work through it. And he had to grow into it. Contentment doesn't come from having more. It comes from trusting more. Oh, at the time we think it does. I want this, I'll be so happy. But in the end, ladies, we're truly left with nothing. We need to trust more. The moment we stop learning gratitude, that's where the silent thief begins to move in. So the first thief we're going to talk about is comparison. We all do it. We try to think we don't, but we do. Even if it's just staring at something. Oh, I wish I had that. Oh, I love that skirt. I wish I could afford that. Comparison is one of the quickest ways to rob your heart of gratitude. Comparison shifts your eyes from what God has done to what God is doing for someone else. It's easy to forget that comparison is not just emotional. Comparison is spiritual. When we compare, we're not just envying someone else's blessings. We're questioning God's goodness in our own life. Galatians 6:4 says, "But let every man prove his own work, and then shall he have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another." That means focus on your own lane, on what God has given you. When we constantly look sideways instead of upward, we lose sight of grace. Maybe your friend has a ministry that's growing faster. But the God who writes her story is the same one writing yours. He knows exactly what chapters will make your heart most like His. Comparison blinds us to the beauty in our own story. Gratitude opens our eyes again. The second thief we're going to be talking about is entitlement. That's another silent thief that sneaks into our hearts. The feeling that we deserve more. It starts subtly. I've worked hard. I've prayed faithfully. I've served long. Why hasn't God done this for me? Ladies, the truth is that gratitude and entitlement cannot live in the same heart. One will push the other out. Every good thing we have is mercy. It's not merit. James 1:18 reminds us every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and cometh down from the Father of lights. When we start to think we've earned what we have, gratitude dries up. But when we remember that every breath, every moment, every prayer answered is pure grace, our hearts overflow again. Entitlement whispers, I deserve. Gratitude whispers, I don't deserve, but thank you, Lord, that you gave anyway. A grateful heart doesn't demand, it simply delights. The third thief we're going to talk about is busyness and distraction. Sometimes the thief isn't comparison or entitlement. It's just plain busyness. Life gets so full that we forget to notice what we are blessed with. We move from one thing to the next, rushing through days without pausing to see the fingerprints of God all around us. And ladies, sometimes it's not just busyness, it's what we want to do over what we know we should prioritize. Psalm 46:10 says, be still and know that I am God. Gratitude grows in stillness. But in our culture, stillness feels like a luxury. We scroll instead of savor. We rush instead of rest. We reach for what's next instead of rejoicing in what's now. The enemy doesn't have to make you bad. He just has to make you busy. Because a hurried heart rarely has room for thanksgiving. When life feels too full to be grateful, it's time to slow down. And remember that God's presence is found in the pause. Next, we're going to talk about the forgotten discipline of contentment. Paul said, I have learned in whatsoever state I am therewith to be content. We talked about this in our first Thankful podcast. What a thought-provoking statement in a world that's always chasing for more, more, more. Contentment isn't complacency, it's peace and progress. It's not saying, I'll never desire change, but it's saying, until change comes, I'll praise God right where I am. Contentment doesn't mean everything's perfect. It means I trust God's timing because God's timing is perfect. That's what Paul said in verse 13, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. This verse isn't about success, it's about sufficiency. Paul was saying, I can endure anything. I can go through any season because Christ is enough. A content woman doesn't have a perfect life. A contented woman has a peaceful heart. Now let's talk about the heart test. What fills your thoughts? Discontentment often hides in our thought life. Philippians 4:8 gives us the antidote. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just. And then it goes on to say, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Whatever fills our minds shapes our gratitude. If we dwell on what's wrong, we're going to live restless. If we dwell on what's right in God, we will live rejoicing. Think on this, ladies. What do you rehearse more? Your blessings or your burdens? Gratitude doesn't ignore the hard things. It just chooses not to make them the headline. My next point, spiritual danger of forgetting. In Deuteronomy 8, God warned Israel not to forget him once they entered the promised land. He said, beware that thou forget not the Lord thy God. Isn't it something that God's biggest concern wasn't that they would reject him, but that they would forget him. Forgetting is dangerous because it leads to pride. We begin to think we've provided for ourselves, and that's when thankfulness fades. That's why remembering is a form of worship. Every time we stop and recall his goodness, we pull our hearts back toward humility. A thankful woman remembers. She looks back and sees how God came through again and again and again and again and again. She keeps a record of mercy because she knows her memory is short, but her blessings are many. My next big point, the blessing of enough. We live in a world that glorifies more money, more success, more likes, more approval. But God calls us to the beauty of enough. Proverbs 30 verse 8 says, "Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me." That's a powerful prayer. It's saying, Lord, don't give me so much that I forget you. And don't give me so little that I lose hope. Just give me what you think I need. Give me what you know I need. Gratitude begins where greed ends. When we stop chasing more and start thanking for enough, peace settles in because enough with God is abundance. Now let's talk about gratitude. Restores perspective. When the thief of thankfulness has done his damage, life starts to look darker. We begin to see everything through the lens of lack, but gratitude restores the lens of truth. Psalm 103:2 says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits." When David was overwhelmed, he talked to his soul. He commanded it to remember. Sometimes we have to do that too. When discontentment starts whispering, we need to speak truth louder. Remember how he's provided. Remember how he forgave you. Remember how he answered that prayer. Remember how he's never failed you yet. The thief loses his power when we start remembering what God has done. Gratitude brings everything back into focus. Now let's talk about gratitude and humility and how they walk together. A thankful heart is a humble heart. Pride says, I earned this. Gratitude says, I was blessed with this. When we stay humble before the Lord, our gratitude stays fresh. That's why James 4:6 reminds us, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. Grace and gratitude are intertwined. The more we see his grace, the more thankful we become. And the more thankful we become, the more grace he gives. If we want a heart full of gratitude, start by bowing low before the giver. Now let's talk about how to reclaim thankfulness. If you've realized that thankfulness has been slipping away, God can restore it. And here's how. Number 1, pause daily. Before you reach for your phone, reach for his word. Ask, Lord, remind me of your goodness today. Number 2, name your blessings out loud or in writing. Don't just list material things. Thank him for mercy. Thank him for forgiveness. Thank him for lessons learned, for growth through trials. Number 3, stop comparing. Every time you catch yourself comparing, turn it into praise. Lord, thank you for what you've given her, and thank you for what you've given me. Number 4, simplify your life. Gratitude flourishes in uncluttered hearts. Slow down. Make room for awe. And number 5, remember your story. Look back on how far God has brought you. Gratitude grows in remembrance. When you practice these steps, the thief loses his grip and joy begins to return. Now let's talk about the freedom of a thankful heart. When we let go of comparison, entitlement, and distraction, something beautiful happens. We find freedom. Freedom from striving, freedom from envy, from needing to prove ourselves. Thankfulness frees us from endless chase for more. And that's the paradox of gratitude. The more thankful we become, the richer life feels. Because when you truly believe that Jesus is enough, you realize you already have more than you ever deserve. Ladies, I'm going to end by asking a few questions for us to dwell on this week. Which silent thief tends to steal your thankfulness? Is it comparison? Is it entitlement or busyness? Number 2, how can you practice contentment in a specific area of your life this week? Number 3, what's one forgotten blessing you can thank God for today? And number 4, how would your outlook change if you viewed everything you have as grace and not as a right? Ladies, the world says you'll be thankful when you have more. Oh, but God says you'll have more when you're thankful. True gratitude doesn't depend on what's in your hands. It depends on who's holding your heart. And when your heart is full of Him, nothing else can steal your joy. God bless, ladies. Thank you so much, ladies, for taking the time to sit and listen in this episode of Faith and Life Together. I pray this podcast has been encouraging and a blessing to you. If so, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. I pray this podcast will grow your relationship with Christ and help you fall more in love with Jesus and be the Christian God has called you to be. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening to this episode. Until next time, God bless.